4:30, we'll call the meeting of the Waxahachie Independent School District Board of Trustees to order. Please let the record show that we have 6 trustees in attendance. This meeting has been duly called, and notice this meeting has been duly posted for time and manner required by law. At this time, the board will go into closed session according to Section 551.001 et sec of the Texas Government Code. It is now 5 p.m. Excuse me, 4:30 p.m. Sorry. 4:47, the board will reconvene back into open session. First item on our agenda is our open forum. I don't believe we have anyone signed up to speak tonight. So we will move into our workshop, which is our trustee continuing education team of 8 training as required by the State Board of Education. Dr. Gibson?
Thank you, President Autry and trustees. And, well, there it is. I was worried, and by magic, there's the PowerPoint. It's my pleasure to be back with you tonight. And I think that you have a packet. We've got a quick PowerPoint to run through, and then you have a packet. And there is a working agenda, just so everyone is aware that, we're following a progression through this. And the purpose of tonight, we're going to go ahead and, President Autry, remind me how long the new trustees have been on the board?
Since May, so 6-7 months?
6 or 7 months.
Yes, sir.
So and former trustees that have been on the board, you remember taking the team trust self-analysis. So we're going to go ahead and take it, again, at the beginning of this in just a moment. And then at the end of the team of 8 training, the conclusion of it will be to debrief it. That is eligible for executive session. I'll just remind you, and I think a year ago we did choose to do that. We did, and so I'm just giving you a heads up that at the end of this, we could go into executive session, or we can just debrief it here. It's at the pleasure of the board. Okay. But it is eligible under 551074 personnel. And I saw a few of you walking in at the board meeting, and I apologize for sitting in my car, but I was on a Zoom, and I was actually leading it, or I would have just assigned it to someone else. And Dusty walked up, and so I hit mute and talked to him for a little bit, and I was lost a little bit, Dusty, after that. But it was all good, and they knew. I told them, I said, I'm walking into board training the second this is over. So thank you all for giving me about 5 or 10 minutes there at the first of this meeting to get my thoughts collected. So tonight on the working agenda, for the new trustees, you're required by statute to get some continuing ed hours, and I do my best to make that more of a conversation and a dialogue and not death by PowerPoint. And although I do have a PowerPoint tonight, but it's not death by PowerPoint. And for some of the trustees that have been on the board, hold on, let me get a drink. For some of the trustees that have been on the board, some of this will be reminders, but then there's a few few slides in here that are new material, but it will definitely kind of level set all 7 trustees. So real quickly before we start, and on the working agenda, and then we'll run through the PowerPoint to reinforce these, but you've developed system and a scorecard and what we call at Moat-Casey a performance management system. So you've got this system now. And the last time I was here, we were down here on the floor and we were going through the objectives and we were going through the measures. And we'll talk more about that here in just a little bit. It's a best practice that is not something that is very common practice, but it's emerging to for the tactical team or the folks that sit on the edges of the dais here, for them to sit with the strategic team, the team of 8, and go through our performance metrics, at least annually, if not more frequently. You all are on a pattern of more frequent than that, and I think that's great. And just for the sake of making sure the new trustees are aware of this, but then also a reminder to all the rest of the trustees, all that is required by law is for you to do a public forum probably in January for your TAPR or taper report. That's all that's required by law. And so you're exceeding that, and that's a public meeting. You'll have to, go through the taper report, and you have to say, does anybody want to have any comments or anything? So your strategic roundtables do not take the place of that, but the purpose of them is to give trustees data and information more in real time than this 1-year report that has 2-year data and a lot of 2-year-old data in it. So our belief at Moat-Casey is that we think that trustees deserve a more frequent review of how the district's doing than this one time a year required annual report, if you will. So we'll talk a little bit more about strategic roundtables in just a little bit. So if I, just a broad overview, so a lot of this is based on total quality management, or TQM. I apologize, David just reminded me. In your packet I gave mine to Dr. Averett. Well, I gave him my, here you go, the team trust. I took it out. You gave it to me. You gave it to me.
Okay.
I gave
All
it.
right.
So in your packet, there's 2 pages of team trust self-analysis. So what we're going to do is, President Autry, go ahead and just collect this in 5 minutes, and then if you all are comfortable, I'm going to let Dr. Averett tally them while we're doing the other things. And then that'll just make the evening shorter, because I'll have the results tabulated. If that sounds all right with you all, we'll have them tabulated that way at the end of the team of 8 before we debrief it. So for the new trustees, but then for everyone, just a reminder: when we say we on this, it is the strategic team or the team of 8. And so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We have all 8 there. And so does that make sense? The we is the team of 8. And you're basing this on, this arguably like this last year, since the last time we took this a year ago. All right, I'm not going to over talk it. Does everybody feel good? And this is just a free response, gut feeling. If you don't feel strongly one way or the other, neutral sits right there in the middle. So we'll take, and we're going to go ahead, we'll talk about potential transitions, but this is based on the last year, and so we will ask all 8 members to take it. Okay, we're, sorry. I'll have to stop on the way home. All right, I think we have, and that'll save us 5 or 10 minutes of gap time later, and so thank y'all for doing that right now. And President Alter, I know you know this, and I want to just reinforce it to everyone. I want y'all to feel free to just stop and have a conversation about anything that's in here or any experience, that comes to mind as we do this. I know it's PowerPoint, but I do want it to be conversational. So before we really start digging into this, just to make sure that we're clear, and we're going to talk a little bit later about a 4-year process. I've given you a document to look at, and I'll go ahead and just talk about this right now. If we're building a system, then it doesn't matter if any one of the 8 members change, new trustee, new superintendent, it doesn't matter. The system is the system, if that makes sense. And so tonight, I think it's a good, anytime's a good time to talk about having a systematic or a systemic process, but definitely tonight. So we're trying to make sure when you all look at your scorecard and you look at objectives and you look at targets and key strategic actions, what you're doing is you're looking at what the system has decided are the targets that we're aiming for. So it doesn't matter who is present at any given point in time, the system is the system. And so we just keep attacking the objectives. And so tonight we're talking about a systems approach. You all have designed your scorecard around 4, you have, I think, Dr. Hollingsworth, their priorities, or what did y'all wind up, 4 priorities. Those 4 priorities line up, a little different terminology, but it's basically improved student outcomes, increased staff morale, community satisfaction, and greater return on investment. If we're investing dollars, taxpayer dollars, are we getting the best ROI on those? At the same time that you're managing and helicoptering up as a board and you're looking at the system and you're overseeing what management is doing, we'll talk more about that here in a little bit, you're also trying to make sure that as a team of 8, that you're anchoring your work to the belief, mission, vision, and goals, systems and processes, progress and accountability, advocacy and engagement, synergy and teamwork, and financial stewardship. These are the same things stated a little more granularly, and I'm going to just move on to the next slide. So you all already have the strategy execution tools, and you already have the systems. I want to go back to the mindset and anchor a little bit to the mindset. So team trust, and we're going to spend some time, a second half of tonight is talking about team trust. The first half is just talking about the 3 essential roles, a continuous improvement model, and then strategic alignment. And then President Autry, I'm going to go past team trust because we're going to wind up there at the end of the night with the inventory that you all just took. So we're going to go into 3 essential roles. And there's 3 slides here, and then there's a slide I'm going to park on, and I'm going to ask a question, and we'll see if we can have some dialogue. But, and again, for new trustees, this may be the first time you're seeing this, I don't know, but it's good, for all of us to anchor to this on a regular basis, at the very least annually. So the strategic role in an organization it doesn't matter if it's military, for-profit, nonprofit, governmental, non-governmental. The same 3, we believe the same 3 roles apply: strategic, tactical, and operational. So you all, whether you know it or not, or like it or not, you are in the strategic role. And I'm going to look at the very last bullet first. You work on the system, not in the system. And we'll talk about the difference between representatives and trustees here in a little bit. This is true for almost all boards of profit or nonprofit. You're in the strategic role. I don't know if y'all remember, it's probably been 10 years now or 15 years ago. Do you remember Steve Jobs quit at Apple? Remember? And that whole scrum, that created that. Well, there were lots of now we're doing, Monday morning quarterbacking about, and books are being written about what really happened. But the conventional wisdom is that the board members wanted to not sit in the boardroom. They wanted to go to the plant and see how this stuff was made, see how these things were made. And Steve Jobs said, no, over my dead body, you're not. You are not, you're not, you're not. And it finally blew up, and they forced him out. And then, I don't remember the guy's name, Wozniak, or whoever it was that took over, something like that. He immediately took the board to the plant, and he showed them. Now, the thing is, they didn't go in the R&D room that's top secret, right? He's like, no one. And that's really what Jobs didn't want them to go in the research and development room and just see all the things that they were working on. And I don't blame him for that. But it's just an interesting debate. So it's members of the strategic role that work on the big picture, and they set this real big vision. But they were saying, if I can't be the best board member that I can be if I don't know how the thing is made. Like, that's all they were saying. We just need to know how it's made. You're saying we can cut this cost there, or you can't even touch that cost, don't even dare do it. So I'm not saying that y'all need to go to the floor, which would be the classroom, but the strategic roundtables that we're committed to, that's what we believe is like the closest thing to that. We're going to dig into the data, and we're going to listen to the tacticians. I don't mind saying this. There are some boards across the state now, in light of this, what I'm talking about right now, that not a quorum, but less than a quorum the superintendents are doing what we call academic rounds. They're going around to campuses. And then less than a quorum of trustees are signing up to go with superintendent, not on all of them, because some of them are, like boss to employee conversations, right? But on some of the rounds where they're going to go look at how some new curriculum, I think you all adopted some new curriculum.
Yeah, I was going to say that. We've done some of that, and that's kind of an open invitation to any of the trustees, if they want to come and be a part of some of those classrooms, because sometimes I think that's really helpful.
Okay, so that's the same concept, and I forgot about that, and I think that's great. And so it's the same concept as Apple. I don't need to get in there and tell the work or how to do the thing, but I want to go see how the thing is made, so that when I'm sitting in here, I've got a picture in my mind of what this looks like on the front line. So I think that's a best practice, and I'm going to tell you that there are superintendents right now that text me and say, this is wrong. You telling board members that they ought to go see what reading looks like in a kindergarten classroom. But we believe strongly in this, that the strategic role, at the very least, needs to do strategic roundtables. If not, go put their eyes on it. And President Autry and trustees, it doesn't mean that you're going to go in there and tell a kindergarten teacher, that's wrong. It's just go watch what that looks like at the front line. And then it helps you have a picture in your mind when you're in here talking about. And y'all did some work with some different curriculum things, if my memory doesn't fail me, and to go see what that looks like, it's not a bad idea.
It's all about what you do with the information. I mean, if you learn the information and it helps you up here to be able to make a better decision related to curriculum and instruction, there's nothing wrong with that. If you use the information, I'm going to go now act as a supervisor for the kindergarten teacher, that's out of your lane.
Well, so it's not only out of your lane, it's illegal.
Yeah.
And so I get, because a trustee has no authority except in a duly called meeting with a quorum of board members present. That's clear. So I get why we get some pushback on this, because when we get those communications that you're getting too close to them doing something illegal, why would you do that? Okay, that's fair. I get that. We're just saying if we can put the right structure around it, it's just putting eyes on it. You know, like it helps to go put eyes on it. Has anybody participated in any of those? Do you mind? I know this is supposed to be me talking and you listening, but what did you go see, if you don't mind, Ms. Timmerman?
I went to 3 different schools, and I visited the rooms and saw Amplify and Eureka in action, and got to talk to the teachers, talk to some of the kids, you know, just what are you doing, and looked at their work, and it was a great experience. And no one knew we were coming. It wasn't like it was a dog and pony show. It was actually what they were doing.
And so I'm assuming, I think I know the answer to this, but see, Amplify was talked about at the dais, right? And so having a conversation about Amplify there and then going and just looking at what it looks like is 2 different things. It's the same thing, but it's 2 different lenses, right? You were able to look at it kind of ground level. And again, I mean, the key is that you've got to agree on the protocol and the process and the structure. Tell me about or tell us about, same thing, just.
I mean, yes, I saw what was happening with Amplify.
See, that's good. So it's in that particular case, that's a conversation that's occurring at the dais, and it's someone from the strategic role wanting to go see what that looks like because we're talking about it and thinking about it and even dedicating resources to it at the dais. All right. Thank you all very much for sharing that. So strategic role, and then we move to tactical role. Thank you. Deloitte and Touche has audited the results of the team trust, so we'll jump to those here in just a little bit. So the tactical team in any organization is the team that takes the strategy, and then they typically look at a 4 to 5 year vision, and then they put it into a 1 to 2 year chunk, if you will. And then this team, and generally speaking, your tactical team are the folks that sit here just off of the dais, but then there are others as well. You and I've been in meetings here, 50, and Dr. Averett, 50 or 60 people. That's the full tactical team, did you say?
Yeah, our district leadership team, which is really your directors, your principals, plus our cabinet.
And so occasionally it's just, I'm on a Zoom with cabinet and we're talking about really high level tactics. And then every once in a while, we'll be here and we'll be with the whole tactical team. And those, to me, are the work sessions, Dr. Hollingsworth, where we're talking about what does this look like down to the front line.
That's where we did a lot of the work, was with our district leadership team, and you were there when we originally were developing the balanced scorecard to bring to the board.
And I'm going to do the next click. So see, we had the full tactical team talking about what does this look like all the way to the front line. So I want to anchor on strategic, tactical, operational. Does that make sense? And I mean, I'll just say this for the strategic member, because you are managed, this is part of the Team of 8 training, you are managed by the education code. To go to the operational role and say what they need to do is actually against the law. Now, President Autry, I don't think there's any ed code police that, come swooping in or whatever, but you technically do not have any authority unless you're in a duly called meeting with a quorum of board members present. So, but we're trying to create this line of sight between the strategic and the tactical team at the round table, and then this opportunity if you want to go see what it looks like at the operational level. We're trying to create a structure that allows that. Any questions, thoughts on these 3 essential roles? Who sent the email earlier and said, do not ask him any questions and we get out earlier? Somebody fess. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thank you. All right. So I want to go in a little bit to the concept of this strategic role and just a little deeper dive at it. So oftentimes, and this is really good for new trustees, but it's a good reminder for every trustee. And I think I've told at least part of the board, my last superintendency, I wound up on the teacher retirement system board. So I was superintendent during the day, and then I would go to a meeting and I'm a board, and I'm just going to tell you, it was hard. It was hard for me to get out of tactical mind and get into strategic mind. And when I kind of rolled into TRS hot, I've told some of the trustees that already. I rolled in there thinking these are things that need to change. But I was in my tactical mind as a superintendent, not in I am a board member on TRS. And by the way, it's the board of trustees. So there's this big difference. And I struggled the first year because I felt like in that role, I felt like I was a representative rather than a trustee. See, I felt like I owed some people something for getting me in that position. And our state government and probably your city council, they are elected as representatives, even though, I mean, it is the House of Representatives. Even your senators are representatives. That is completely different by law for a trustee. So I want to stop here for just a second on this slide. And there's only, you can look at the bulleted list that I just kind of pulled from the legal statutes. There's only one of those bullets that is the same. Which one is it? You're elected. Like that's the only thing that's the same. Then it goes down two different paths after that. And it just hit me like a rock when I realized that I do have information as a trustee on the Teacher Retirement System Board. I have access to information that other people do not have access to, right? Like I get access to that. The system is designed that way. A trustee has information that the person on the street does not have. We all took advantage of, at the start of this meeting, for a quick conversation that was properly posted because you're privy to information that's why that exists. There are opportunities for representatives to do things in executive session, but they are very rare. Now, I'm not saying they don't have meetings before the meetings and meetings after the meetings at the Capitol, right? But technically, in Austin, I'm just going to use Austin, that's the closest example for me, all that dialogue is supposed to be done in those meetings with all of us available to watch online. That's not true for you all. Generally speaking, the majority of the work is done here on camera, but then you have access to 551, 071, 070, 071, to say that is of a sensitive nature. We get to do that in executive session so that we can figure this out. That is your authority. And not only your authority, it is incumbent on you to be informed by what you learn from the facts and what you learn from each other. Then this is the big difference between a trustee and a representative. Not only do you have the autonomy, you have the responsibility to vote as you see fit, even if it goes against your constituents. That's a completely different construct. Theoretically, a representative should be in harmony with their constituents, and 51% or more want this, then I'm going to go that way. Now, I would argue the primary system, is it 51% of all the constituents or 51% of the voters in the primary, right? I mean, I'm being real here, so, and that's part of like what's going on right now in our statewide system. The districts have been redrawn so that the primary election is really the only election that counts. A bunch of state representatives were up for election last night, a bunch, and there were probably only 4 or 5 that really anyone was watching. It could be the R or the D that wins that one. Okay, I'm gonna pause. Does that make sense on the difference between a trustee and a representative? President Autry, I saw you nodding your head. Have you seen something like that before?
Very first school board training I ever went to in San Antonio, first class.
First class was the difference between a trustee and a representative.
Yes, sir.
How long ago was that?
Too long ago.
Well,
8 years ago. About 8 years ago.
8 years ago. And to me, like to anchor back to this, because I know how back to this thing, like your phones get blown up with just information. It may be factual, it may not be factual. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely.
But it gets blown up. And so to me, it helped me when I was on the TRS board to think, okay, I'm not going to ignore them. I'll look at it, but I'm also not going to forward it to the executive director for the TRS system and say, do something about it, right? Because I might listen, 12th time I've heard it. Okay, 12th time I've heard it. You know, I'm going to think of the right time, you know, in the right context for the right item to say something about it, but not just forward it. Okay, don't want to stick there too long, but that makes me feel good that that was on somebody's slide deck at TASB 8 years ago. And I think it's an oldie but a goodie that we just keep anchoring back to that. So the environment, this is the last component of the mindset. So we are building a system here, and I think I showed this slide when we launched the first strategic roundtable. I think Mr. Pitts and Mr. Cooper, like y'all literally just got on the board and we got down here. That's my recollection anyway. We got down here around, at the tables like literally right when y'all were coming on, which is great. Not every day is a roundtable, but we just so happened that night we were doing a roundtable. So one of the ways to think about this is that the tactical team and the strategic team, when you're doing planning work, we're planning together. Now your tactical team is your subject matter experts, but in roundtables, we're gonna talk about planning. Then when it comes to doing and acting in this continuous improvement model, that's your tacticians and your operational role. That's them. They do all the doing, they do all the acting. The strategic roundtables is trying to set up for you all an opportunity when the administrative team has some data that they're checking along the way, that they share that with the board. That's the primary purpose of the strategic roundtable. You all, this is November, you probably, Dr. Hollingsworth and Dr. Averitt, y'all just got some data map test or?
Well, it's interesting you say that because one of the things that came out of, and to just refresh your memory, so Mr. Cooper and Mr. Pitts came on board in May. Then we had our August 26th academic workshop with you. So that was at the end of August, and that's when we had our first roundtable academic discussion. One of the things that came out of that was a request from the board to have more frequent updates on 1.1, which is our highest priority, which is every student grows academically every year.
Great.
So as a part of this coming board meeting, which I've shared already with a couple of folks because we had our pre-board meetings, and I'll meet with the rest over the next couple of days, we're going to do our priority 3, which is community and stakeholder relationships. But we're also going to do a separate report with Ms. Heimbuck and Ms. Hilburn specific to 1.1 to give the board an update on where we are with just progress specific to the implementation of Amplify in Eureka.
Yeah,
So,
it's not necessarily MOY data that you're getting right now, but you've got a data set, probably more like January, February, late January, early February, you've got a full-blown MOY middle of the year. Is that fair to say?
yeah, this is just kind of an early read.
I like it. So August was anchoring to why those measures are the right measures. November is early check-in. And then my recommendation would be February, deep dive, strategic roundtable. We've got MOY data.
And that's what we have planned. That's right.
Okay. Yeah, because you and President Autry, you're going to have to, I'm challenging you to say it needs to be a 1-hour meeting, or it needs to be a 90-minute meeting, or it needs to be a 2-hour meeting, because I can tell you, I've been in his role, they've got a full day's worth of data, right? There's enough for a full day workshop. So but I do think it's really important, like if we're going to do it in a workshop, the MOY, that we say it's a 90-minute meeting. So give us everything you got on this mid-year check for 90 minutes or 2 hours. And I might open it up, trustees, to what feels like the right amount of time. I know time doesn't equal data, but they're going to fill up every minute with the data, I can assure you. So I'm going to open it up. Does 90 minutes feel about right? 2 hours? Here's my observation, President Autry. There's 7 board members and there's 7 opinions on, is that fair to say, on how much?
Pretty fair.
Okay, how much? And so I think to calibrate and help them know 2 hours is enough, you know, like 2-hour workshop or 90. And I apologize, I interrupted you.
No, that,
Is that what you?
you said there'd be 7 different opinions, yes.
Okay, so that's probably what he was about to say. So I'm going to ask trustees, we're talking about the February check-in on middle of the year MOY data. How long does that feel is about the right amount of data for you to receive?
90 minutes?
90 minutes?
I was gonna say 90 minutes as well.
Okay, so
So
there's,
we're down to 6 opinions now.
yeah, I hear that, that's right. Does that feel about right?
How long it needs to be, but I want black and white, A to Z, is it working, is it not? You know, I just want, let's see if it's working or not. You've done you went and got all the data, let us see where it's at.
That's good. I think 90 minutes is consistent with what you just said, Mr. Cooper. And my dad, I think I told you, he was a school board president in the next town over when I became a superintendent. And he was like, you want to keep your job, son? If the board asks you what time it is, don't tell them how to make a watch. Right? And I'll never forget that. So see, the 90-minute, I think you can get a lot of checkpoint. You know, here's where we are. Now, the thing, any other thoughts? 90 minutes feel about right for everybody? So I think that, yeah, and it's kind of their job, right? Like you've hired them to know all that data. I like the 90 minutes, and thank you, Mr. Schofield. I like the 90 minutes because, and I'm going to tell you, like the challenge, I'm not in Dr. Averett's mind, but I know, like he's thinking 90 minutes. Okay, we've got to do like but that's why he needs that. But the crystallization of the data that occurs between now and then, knowing that it's 90 minutes, is helpful. It always helped me because we've got 90 minutes to tell the story. And I would let me have the first PowerPoint, you know, and it would be 98 slides long. And I would say, so we're doing less than 1 minute per slide. Well, no, that's impossible. Okay, maybe you didn't hear the part about this meeting is 90 minutes long. Okay, give us a week. Staff goes away, come back. Now it's 60 slides. Okay, let's do one more of the, you know, and then they go. And my observation, President Autry, is they weren't like just dumping information, they were crystallizing. And I think it helped us as an admin team. Like, what's the real signal we need to be looking at right now? Because we can get, Dr. Hollingsworth and Dr. Avery, we can get lost in all the data points, right? And I think to have the highest ranking signals kind of rise to the top and share that with the board, I think is a good exercise. Any thoughts on, I think we just scheduled a February MOY 90-minute, not to exceed 2 hour, 90 minute to 2 hour with question workshop. Dr. Avery, is that good for you?
Yes, sir. That was our plan. That's what we have on our schedule for this spring semester.
That's great. And if you're doing, Dr. Hollingsworth, check-ins along the way, is what I just heard, and then you're setting aside some round tables periodically, I think that's the best practice.
Yeah, and we got really good feedback I did individually from just about all the board after that August 26th roundtable, that was just really good. I know that the strategic team, the cabinet enjoyed that time as well. They just felt like they were able to really explain in more depth the work that's going on. And that was a really effective, meeting.
So trustees, I want to provide, and Dr. Avery, if you can help me, this slide by itself for the trustees. Because one thing that I think you can do on the strategic team as you're listening to a tactical report, which those roundtables are tactical reports, am I hearing that we're at stage 1, or am I hearing that we're at stage 2, or am I hearing that we're at stage 3, or am I hearing that we're at stage 4? And I want to pause here for a second. So stage 1, you can see the graphic over to the right. We're just reacting to problems. Now, I would argue, someone would have to show me how you're still in stage 1 if you have a scorecard. Do you follow what I'm saying? Like, I just feel like there's no way. Like, I think you, in doing that round table, like, you got out, like, and yeah, are we doing some reaction to some problems? Of course. But our overall modus operandi is not just, we're just reacting, playing whack-a-mole. So, I would argue, I would think, Dr. Averitt and Dr. Hunsworth, like, y'all probably feel comfortable that you're in 2. Is that fair? Early 2, moving from early 2 to late 2?
Well, as you know, we've done this, we've done several checks on this with our DLT and asking principals specifically, where do you feel we are on specific areas of the system? And it generally ranges between 2 and 3 in terms of where we're at.
Yeah, we went through with all our summer retreat that we did at the cabinet, and then as we did with our entire DLT principals, was that 30-item system check. Looking at stage 1, where are we, 1, 2, 3, or 4 on those 30 different systems in our system. And for example, then we isolated areas where we felt like were our most high leverage systems that we need to continue to work. And we landed on 12 and 13, 12 being what we teach and when we teach it, 13 being what do we do when our students don't show that they understand. So, how do we address tier 2 and tier 3 instruction? But as one of the as we go on campuses and we walk, and we've done 2 walks now with our ed direction folks, what we're seeing is on number 12 is what we teach and when we teach it. We're seeing high alignment in what we teach and when we teach it for that system 12 as far as what we're seeing across grade levels, across campuses, K through 5, with the use of our HQIMs. And we revisit these now at every DLT. We now do a system check of our systems check. Let's talk about how we're doing on number 12 and number 13. And then we looked at also a part of that systems check is what are we doing that we want to keep rolling. And some of those areas were related to communication and how we're pushing information out to parents. And we moved to a district-wide use of a system called Parent Square. And it's much easier for our principals to use. Parents to get this. It was one-way and two-way communication. Things that we felt like as a group we were doing well. So
And the other one that we felt like we were doing well that we need to maintain is safety and security. Because we do safety and security well as a system, but man, we can't let that drop.
Have y'all, and I think if you have not, I think now is a good time that we had this chance to have this conversation. Have you shared this system check with the board yet? I mean, just a copy of it.
I don't know if we've shared that specifically. I know we
I
talked about
recommended that you not. Let me say that.
Okay.
Earlier, because we were just launching so
Right.
many things, and I was like, do not give another thing that y'all are looking at. But after tonight's conversation, I think for the trustees, if it's all right with y'all, for y'all to look at this 30, it's like 30 checkpoints. So they've got 30 checkpoints that they're analyzing, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, constantly. And Dr. Averitt, you said 12. Is that your, do we see alignment from the written to the taught to the assessed curriculum in there? Okay.
when we teach it was really number 12, and that was where we said that's what we've got for this year, because we knew it makes such a big change.
So I think it would be good because I'm saying to the trustees, systems approach, y'all need to know that's a tool that your cabinet is using behind the scenes. And I know I told them, I said, ladies and gentlemen, this is like 30 plates that you've got to get spinning on a 6-foot pole. You've got to keep all 30 of them spinning. And just because you get a new one spinning, you got to, ensure someone's keeping the other one spinning. And you just mentioned a vendor that I happen to think is doing a good job statewide, Parent Square, with making one-way and two-way communication more systematic, because it's more user-friendly. And so if it's more user-friendly to the lower tactical role, the campuses, user-friendly. They're more apt to use it. And so we get this communication coming back and forth. I don't have those 30 things committed to memory, but one of those is, do we have robust systems for one-way and two-way communication?
16 and 17.
There you go. He's got them committed to memory. So good for you. That must be in your lane, 16. So process 16 and process 17 on the systems
So
check.
go back a little bit, the answer to why we went to Parent Square was because we got feedback from our parents. We do our surveys, and we ask folks, and feedback that we got from our community, our families, was, could we land on one way? Because we've got all these different ways that folks communicate with families. We had Remind 101, we had Seesaw, we had Sports U, we had just email blasts, so there was a request, came back from feedback from our families that we would like one system. And so Mrs. Bridges, our communication director, she went out and did the research, and she found a product that can do all of that for us. So that's where we landed.
And I know you're not asking me for feedback, but I do have the advantage of being all over the state every week. And that particular one that you landed on, I'm just hearing over and over and over again. So they did something right, because they figured out something, because I'm just hearing it as a strategy for process 16 and 17 all over the state. All right. I think sharing the systems check, did you have something to add to that, Dr.? Okay, sharing the systems check, I think it's a good time to do that, and just raise awareness, so when Dr. Averett's saying 16 and 17 and 12 and all this, y'all know what he's talking about. And then I think the board's role, the strategic role, is not necessarily to do the systems check, but it's to ensure that the systems check is being done. Does that make sense? The strategic role ensures. In statute, it's said this way: you have oversight of management. That's what the statute says. The board has oversight of management. So if I walked in here off the street and I said, okay, you're a board member, and the ed code says you're supposed to oversee management, how do you do that? Like, how would y'all answer that question? And I guess you could say, well, we have board meetings and we ask a bunch of questions. We pepper them with a bunch of questions, and that's our oversight. Okay, that doesn't feel very systematic. It just feels like we have a board meeting. You have to have board meetings. I get that. You're trying to ensure that you have a system for the oversight of management. That's what you're trying to do. So strategic roundtables do that. Checking in on the systems check periodically, they do that. Everybody good with that? I feel like we own horses now, and I always say I don't want to beat a dead horse, and my wife is telling me I can no longer use a dead horse statement. So I don't want to keep going over that. All right, in wrapping up the overview at the start of this, and then we're going to touch on a couple of things and then move to your team trust debrief. So what we're doing when we go all around the state and we gather feedback for why trustees leave the strategic role, so we're constantly checking on it. We have not gathered any data from you all, and that's a good thing, because I think the board has done a really good job of staying in the strategic role. But what we've seen from those that we've studied where trustees have left the strategic role is these five have kind of risen to the top. So trustees take what they know from their own work experience, and then they assume that will work in a school. There's probably some truth to best practices at your work, but I don't know, Dr. Hollingsworth and Dr. Averett, there's nothing like the joy of trying to go from point A to point B in a school district, because it is not a straight line. Like it is in a lot of work. You got a lot of things to navigate to get from A to B. Sometimes trustees try to solve a tactical or an operational problem based on their personal experience. In other words, I'm going to give y'all an example for this. My wife is retired, and the second she retired, she's a diagnostician by trade. So the district immediately said, can we hire you less than half-time to be a diagnostician, right? And so she waited the time she was supposed to be out, and now she's doing diag work. Well, she's a past special ed director. Okay, so Project Creep, now she's supposed to just be a diag, but now there's questions coming from this. And so she's becoming like a de facto second SPED director on her own time because she cannot clock any. I keep saying you're the best deal going for that district because you're doing time and a half at less than half-time pay. So I guess the point there is, and I think I finally convinced her that you're not helping that system get better because you're solving it instead of the system having to solve it. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, and her heart is in the right place. She wants to just fix it, but she's almost enabling the system to be broken, right? Because she's just swooping in. So it's similar to that number 2 and that number 3, because she's just saying it's just easier if I just tell them how to do it. I know it's easier, but it just, now it's broken again, and then it's broken again, and it's broken again, because they're not doing anything to fix the root cause of it. And that's probably 3 and 4, 2, 3, and 4, well, 3 and 4 go together. It's easier and it's just quicker. Like, let's just get it done. Instead of going to the root cause of it, like, let's just get the thing fixed. And then the 5th one is the trustees have not embraced their role in the strategic role, and they don't know how to ask strategic questions. When I got on the TRS board, number 5 was my problem. I had not leaned into the strategic role, right? I was a tactician by day, so I felt like I needed to be a tactician at TRS. Any thoughts on that? We're seeing these 4 additional, well, I guess kind of a crystallization of those. I was at a board meeting the other night, and a trustee brought a flip chart, and not here, of course, and not even in this part of the state, but they were trying to move the flag and everything to get their flip chart back behind them at the dais. Do y'all ever watch C-SPAN? And you see, like, our newly elected Senator Cruz, he's good at this. Like, he'll have a thing behind him, and he'll have charts. You know, he'll have an aide back there changing things back behind him. So I guess there was a board member that thought that was a good idea. So they brought their own flip charts. President Autry, I'm not saying that's a good practice at all, but they were basically saying this particular, and they've got some really deep trust issues, that they don't trust the tactical team's data. So they were bringing their own data. They had done their own research, and they were bringing their own data. I saw it with my own eyes, or I wouldn't have believed it. Trustees, in my observation, is you all do a really good job of letting everybody say what they need to say and not interrupting each other. That's just the few times even if we don't like it, we're going to let everybody finish what they say. And I think that's really important. That's not always happening. That's the orange one. The green one, the darker green one, we're seeing statewide right now is causing some problems, that a vote did not go a trustee, in other words, it's a 6-1 vote or a 5-2 vote. And what's happening with the dark green, and again, not here, but what we're seeing is then the trustee is taking it to social media to say how the other 6 are idiots. My term, not right. Like they're rehashing the vote in the public on social media, and that's causing and that's happening, unfortunately, way too often right now in the state. It's just causing problems. And I'll just tell you what, right now there's an uptick on boards censuring board members. Like it almost never happened, for 50 years. And then it's a semi-regular occurrence, again, not here, but statewide. and it's mainly because of social media posts, which is real dicey because that's a First Amendment right, if that makes sense. Like it is threading a needle. But anyway, I don't want to berate that, but y'all get what I'm saying. So we're seeing quite a bit of that happening on social media. And then tonight we might talk about norms. Dr. Hansworth, remind me, and Dr. Avery, do y'all have board operating procedures? Okay.
Yes, sir.
In fact, one of our board operating procedures is that you will respect and honor the majority.
Okay, so see, that's perfect. And I would even say that, and thank you for sharing that, because like that's really important. And what we're seeing is more boards, and have we embedded, or have y'all embedded norms in board operating procedures? And I don't know that
I don't believe we've codified them specifically as norms. Like we have meeting norms we use in cabinet, but I don't believe we've got them specific, or they're not ones that we've referenced on a regular
So
basis.
if you will remind me, and the president, even when things are going well, what I'm recommending is that you go ahead and codify some of the things like you just said as norms. So they're norms for like when you're on the board, these are norms. And then when new trustees come on, in addition to seeing the board operating procedures, they also, see, board operating procedures are written by lawyers, and I have a lot of friends that are lawyers, they write those. And it's almost like the guardrails to keep you out of trouble, like from accidentally breaking the law. Norms are more of a description of what kind of behaviors we want, if that makes sense. Not the behaviors we don't want, it's the behaviors we want. And I've got some really good samples. And again, I think people have thought in the past that the only time that school district trustees have norms is if there has been a problem. And there might have been some truth to that. Right now, my recommendation is when things are good, that's the best time to write norms, if that makes sense.
Frankly, we've done a lot of training, and I've done, really, for 15 years, I've been trained on professional learning communities.
It's the same thing.
And it's the same concept.
Yes.
You're working as a collaborative team. This is a collaborative team. It is one of the first things that Solution Tree trains you to do is to establish your norms as a team.
Yep, and the models, and I'm happy to share them if y'all will remind me, just before the meeting norms, during the meeting norms, and then between meeting norms. Does that make sense? Like we've got, like the week right before a board meeting, what are our norms for that? When I say norms, it just means like our expectations. So how we get the agenda ready, how we get the board book ready, all those things. And then we have norms during the meeting, so how we want to work as a corporate body. And then the between meetings may not be necessary here, but the one in the upper right-hand corner on the PowerPoint, in those districts, that's really important. And President Autry, remind me, y'all have one that says no matter how the vote goes, you shared something a while ago.
You will respect the majority vote.
Okay, so see, to me.
In honor, so.
Okay, so see, whether you have it as a norm or not, that's a norm. Like once that's happened, it's over, right? Like our norm is that vote is over. And I have a really, really good friend that's a board member in the Coastal Bend area, and she could not let this vote go about an indoor practice facility, right? Like and it's like 6 months later, and I won't call her name, but I just said, you gotta let that go. Like, well, I'm not saying it out loud at meetings, and I'm like, well, your body language is doing it for your voice, right? Because there was just this tension, but just felt like it was the wrong vote. She couldn't let it go. And every time I talked to her, I was like, you got to let go, man. Like, let it go.
I don't think we have that issue here.
Yeah.
As a whole, I really don't.
I've never seen or heard. And again, I think a good time to codify that is when you don't have the issue. Like you set that expectation. I don't think that I won't drill into these right now. I might save these for when we debrief our team trust. And I'm going to wrap up the PowerPoint. So if you guys have set your vision statement, but you also have systems. So a vision without systems just paints a lovely picture, but you guys are digging into deep understanding of the forces that you've got to master to move from here to there. And that's what your roundtables are doing, that's what your board reports are doing, and we even talked about the structure for your next roundtable, and I think that's great. So you have vision plus systems. Does that make sense? Not just vision. Vision is required. It's probably on one of these things somewhere, or something like a vision statement, but you're putting systems in place with your vision. All right, any questions on any of that? I went kind of fast, but I know for new trustees, okay, like anything out of bounds that I said, or all feel about right? Everybody good? Two documents real quickly. And Dr. Hollingsworth, on the agenda, and Dr. Averett, I included the anchoring back. It's number 3 on the working agenda. I put that on every board workshop working agenda, the reminder of the balanced scorecard guiding principles. Does that, I'm not going to spend 5 minutes on it, but let me just ask a question. Do you feel pretty good about where we are as a system if you look at 3A, 3B, 3C, and 3D? You just frame it as a question for the group.
As far as how we operate at the tactical level?
Tactical, and I would even say if you look at B, synchronistic cadence of accountability between the strategic and tactical role, and I think we got the answer to that earlier when we said we're going to have a report. Is that right? Like from the first strategic roundtable, we want to hear more about 1.1. Is that what I heard? Okay, that's 3B. Does that make sense? Yes. Like that's what you all were saying. We want that 3B. We need tactical role to tell strategic role some data points so we know how we're doing.
I mean, I think we have now going on well into year 2 of our balanced scorecard, and we have regular reports to our board on each of the 4 priorities. We rotate them throughout the year, and I think this addition of a deeper look into not just end of year data where we may have landed as far as scores, but also this almost like an interim check, middle of the semester, beginning of the semester, middle of the semester, middle of the year, middle of the second semester, end of the year. We now have that additional level of accountability and cadence added on specifically for that 1.1, which 1.1A in our balanced scorecard is particularly, the details of that are the fact that we use multiple means to measure student growth, whether it's math testing, whether it's interim star, whether it's our district common assessments or our unit assessments. We're gathering that data on a regular basis, reporting it back out to teachers, letting teachers use that data for PLCs, and then having that inform how they instruct their kids. And so we're now reporting that back more regularly.
Well, and that is a description of a pretty robust plan for 3B. We've got these checkpoints. Now, I want to pause for a second because trustees, I want y'all to, like 18 months ago, you did not have that. I just want to say that. And I think that you had good people, good trustees, good staff, working hard prior to the system. Now you've got this cadence of accountability between the strategic role and the tactical role. And that's not easy to do. I'm just telling you, it's not easy to build that system. Dr. Hollingsworth, anything to add to that?
Well, I think that the thing I would add is one of the things I really loved about our roundtable discussion we had in August, that felt like it gave the board an opportunity to really begin to own the balanced scorecard. We presented a balanced scorecard, I believe, in May of 2022 is when we first adopted it. So you're rolling into 22, 23 for the first time. My guess is for most of the board, hey, they presented that to us. We asked a couple of questions, we voted on it and approved it. But now, hopefully, it's becoming to be something where you guys are getting used to it. I mean, where, now, I'm sure if I asked Mr. Schoolfield, 14 months ago, what our priorities are, he'd have been like, dude, no.
Yeah.
I've got plenty going on in my brain. I'm guessing, but I would, yeah, that's probably right. But I would bet now we're getting closer to a place that they could start to tell you what our priorities are. And yeah, we see that on a regular basis, so.
And that's a great way to frame that up. And thank you, Mr. Schofield, for saying what you said, even, because it's not the strategic role to do that work. But if you're doing the oversight of management, you need to kind of know we set these targets. I'm going to tell you the other day, this week I was talking about a previous board training in another area of the state, and the superintendent, the board is asking for a system for knowing if we're making progress. And the superintendent emailed me a scorecard, and it's beautiful. It's immaculate. And I was like, you got it. Show it to him. And he was like, nope, none of their business. Well, that's exactly, I said, you're going to be unemployed. I mean, basically what I said is you're going to have the best scorecard on earth as an unemployed superintendent. Because they're not asking you permission to get down in here and do some stuff. They're just saying we need to know what's going on, right? That's all they're saying. Just tell us how we're doing. And that's kind of sometimes I like to give non-examples, but I'm going to tell you, I was just shocked, like my jaw dropped. I was on the phone, luckily. I was just like, are you kidding me? That's what your bosses are saying? And the thing is, I think I've got him convinced. It's beautiful. Not just beautiful, that's a bad word. It's robust. Their scorecard is robust. I said to him, think about the conversations with you and the board about helping them look at the things that you have on that in your team, how great that conversation will be. I just don't have time for it. Anyway, I think I'm going to get him there, but y'all's district is like laying this thing out here for the board to see, and I appreciate it immensely. Okay. 2 quick documents, and this one's going to be real fast because we've talked about the round tables so much. You all, Dr. Hollingsworth and Dr. Avery, y'all did a strategic roundtable before I had this document completed. So thank you all for being a little bit of a test case. So now we've written up a document that, and it doesn't apply to y'all because it says our scorecard is near completion. Now what? Y'all's is completed, but I just want you to, y'all helped kind of forge the path for this document. If everybody's good, I'm not going to read to you, but it's just showing you this is what a strategic roundtable is. Is everybody good with just, we've talked about that enough tonight, if y'all feel good? Everybody good with it? Okay, and then I want to share this 4-year plan, and then we'll transition to the team trust. We've talked tonight about the strategic role and the tactical role and the operational role, and this is on legal paper up at the dais. So there is a 4-year continuum, and Dr. Hollingsworth, in light of the timeline that you laid out a while ago, I would argue that 2 years ago, when we were developing the scorecard, is probably year 1 on this. So there's a year of pre-work back behind this. Does that make sense? So then you've got this continuum of what the board, the strategic role does year after year after year, and then what the tactical team does year after year after year, and then how those are in harmony with each other. Does that make sense? It's a system. At my place, it's not Harley's, but it's ARs shooting hogs at night is what I hear. So I couldn't sleep with a Harley, but I could with an AR going off on the next pasture over. All right, everybody, this is a system, and we've designed a system. That was the main thing that I wanted to show you. I'll go back to something we said at the very beginning, and then we can talk about transitioning to the next part of tonight's meeting. The system is the system. It doesn't matter if all 9 people that are here tonight and myself, if any one is not a part of the system moves on. And so the beauty of having a systems approach and a scorecard and a strategic roundtable approach is that the vision doesn't come to a screeching halt if any one of the team leaves. Is that fair enough? Like, the vision is the vision, and we're going to keep moving forward. Everybody good with that?
I want to add something real quick before you move into the trust deal, because I think it's really, I was thinking about the lining up of the arrows and that whole alignment idea. When Debbie took those walks, and I was with her on several of them, you go from one campus to another, Greg, and you see, you can go to a third grade classroom and see math instruction. You can get in the car and go to another third grade math classroom and see not identical instruction because the teachers are different, but you would see identical concepts being taught.
Yeah.
That's a system being developed. When we're removing variability on what it is kids experience based on what campus they're at, we're developing a system. That's hard. It's been a hard shift, especially in our elementary classrooms. But I want to tell you something. That's what that work is. We're aligning those arrows so kids are not suffering based upon where they go to school.
Yeah, and if we, amen, and 100%, and we talked about professional learning communities earlier. If you do professional learning communities in the absence of a system, then when teachers are coming together to talk, what are they talking about? There's no common curriculum, no common, here's where we should be at this point. And I've heard it described officially as, instead of collaboration at a PLC, it just becomes collaboration. It kind of makes sense. Like, if we don't have data, or, here's where we are, then they do the same thing that superintendents do when we get on a Zoom. I was on that Zoom in the parking lot, and I always tell them, do not hit record until everybody has had a chance to blow off steam, because we record those and they go out to a bunch of people. And so, the assistant wants to just hit record, and I was like, no, let everybody blow off. So these are all superintendents, 20 superintendents. I was like, let them blow off steam for 5 minutes, and then I'll give a head nod, okay, you can hit record. It's the same concept. When teachers get together, we've got to blow off steam a little bit. Can you believe, but if we have a system, we can get down to, okay, how's third grade team doing? How's math doing?
And the board probably gets tired of me making reference back to this, but when we look at our data and see how many of our kids were not in this system,
right,
prior to 4 years ago, and it's about 60 to 65% of our kids were not part of our system about 4 years ago.
Wow.
Then that is a call for, it's one of the main reasons, as we've seen this dramatic shift in who we are, it's a call for strong systems.
Yeah.
You can have much more lax instructional systems when your kids aren't changing with the frequency and with the numbers that we're seeing. And that's why it's hard work, but it's really good work. And then this is final thought, and then we will transition. I'll ask you how you want to do the next part. But I think what you all have done with what I just heard described, if you think about curriculum and instruction as what needs to be taught and when it needs to be taught and how it needs to be taught, you've tried to put a calendar around what and when, but not how. Is that right? Like, the what and the when's not up for grabs. How you deliver it is up to the art and science of you as an instructor. But we've got to get tighter on the what and the when. Just to give you all, I had to get my head wrapped around it in that language, because I'm going to tell you, when I first became superintendent, I was coming from curriculum, I was coming from teaching, like big teacher, like teach, number one, and I wanted autonomy. So back in the teams and tabs day, not anybody in, well, a couple of us remember, the essential elements started, and I remember thinking, bull,
Like if I want to teach the Civil War for the whole fall semester, I'm teaching the Civil War for the whole fall semester. And then I realized if I did that, like there was a couple thousand years, well, in U.S. history, like, 100 years of history that wasn't getting taught. So it helped me. I got better at knowing I can cram all my, and by the way, I had Civil War gear to wear, and it was back in the day when you could bring a gun to school. It wasn't fireable, but an old Springfield, and I would teach in my captain's uniform, for 3 months I would teach until they yawned the first time. Like I just trying to keep their attention, 8th graders. But then I realized I've got to be on a pace. And so I just got some different uniforms and I went to other areas of history. Okay, thank you all for sharing that and that opportunity. Mr. President, this is eligible for executive session if you want to take a break and adjourn to it. And then I've got the team trust results. And I'll debrief those with the team.
It's up to you guys. You want to do a closed session or? We did the last one in closed session, if I remember
Yes, we
correctly,
did.
right?
It's 100% eligible, 551-074.
Okay. You guys good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. At this time, the board will convene into closed session according to section 551.001 et sec of the Texas Government Code. It is now 6:04.